It all begins in the early 2000s. In some Eastern European country devastated by conflict, our MC was completely beat up. He had taken a hit to the chest, but even on the brink of the end, he refuses to let go of his piece. Just then, a little girl holding a stuffed bunny approaches, begging him to hang in there, but he just tells her to forget him and run away immediately. The girl is completely heartbroken by his response and refuses to do what he says. The man then gives her a very dark glare, ordering her to move right now if she doesn't want to meet the same fate. Terrified by his aggressive reaction, the little girl finally turns around and starts running. She flees in tears, leaving that terrible scene of destruction behind. While the girl runs away through the rubble, the injured young man stays sitting in the corner, waiting for the worst. Suddenly, he feels a presence approaching and realizes his time is finally up. Slow footsteps start echoing through the area. A mysterious man wearing a suit and a long trench coat walks calmly toward the MC. He is not alone, as several heavily geared soldiers follow him and quickly surround the entire area. Seeing the young man in that pitiful state, the group's leader looks surprised and calls him by his code name, Nightshade. The guy in the trench coat mentions that the young man truly is the ruthless monster he's heard so many rumors about in the underworld. He is even more impressed when he realizes the young man caused all that damage single-handedly. Looking around, the trail of destruction is obvious, with dozens of fallen enemy soldiers scattered across the ground. Despite the incredible feat, the leader in the trench coat points out that what he did there is totally unforgivable. He expresses his deep regret seeing such a talented warrior choosing to go down just because of a silly attachment to someone. Without a second thought, the man pulls out his piece, aims right at the injured young man's head, and asks if he has any last words. Instead of begging for mercy or showing fear, the young man simply flashes a sarcastic smirk. He then waves his hand dismissively, showing he isn't scared in the slightest. With a cold expression, the leader in the trench coat says they will see each other in the underworld before pulling the trigger to finish the job. The scene then abruptly cuts to the present day, where a massive brute yells furiously at two trembling boys kneeling on a warehouse floor gripping a golf club. The bald man aggressively asks if the boys seriously think they can back out of their deal now. One of the young men desperately tries to defend himself, explaining that no one warned them about the real risks, and they thought it was just a simple driving gig. Meanwhile, another thug smoking casually chimes in, saying the job is still just driving, not getting why they are making such a big deal out of it. The redhead keeps begging the gang for mercy, while the other guy remains entirely chill. The red-haired youth breaks down in tears, screaming that it makes zero sense for a simple driving gig to involve pulling up to a crime scene, just to act as a getaway for a professional hitman out of nowhere. The bald man slams his golf club hard against the floor to scare the boys even more. The bald guy points the club and snaps that they are just paid delivery, boys meant to take anything, anyone, anywhere. He then grabs the red-haired boy by the collar and presses a sharp blade to his neck, threatening to end him right there. Panicking, the boy begs for his life, when suddenly a firm hand grabs the brute's wrist, stopping the attack. The bald man looks extremely confused and ticked off that his move was blocked like that. The other youth, wearing a cap, volunteers to do the job all by himself. Kay begs the brute to let his senior go, leaving the redhead completely floored by that impulsive move. With a confident tone, Kay gives a thumbs up and tries to calm his partner down, saying a pro-operative doesn't just go around taking out regular civilians, he just secretly hopes he's right as the dark night falls over the big city. In a lavish office, the peace is violently shattered when a syndicate boss takes a direct hit to the head, splashing crimson everywhere. The other mob members in the room completely lose it, pulling out their pieces as they realize they are being ambushed. One of the bodyguards tries to yell for the boss to take cover, but gets instantly taken down by a fatal strike. The survivors watch in pure horror at how easily their crew is being picked off one by one. Seeing another friend drop against the wall, they realize with absolute dread that the blasts are piercing right through the drywall. A cold voice echoes, mocking them, saying a simple drywall could never stop his .50 caliber rounds. Just then, the office door slowly begins to open, leaving the three survivors frozen in fear at the imminent danger. The operative finally steps into the room, revealing himself as a gray-haired man in a dark trench coat, holding a piece with a suppressor. Desperate, the mob boss kicks a heavy round wooden table to try and use it as a shield against the intruder. However, the operative shows an absurd amount of strength, blocking the flying table with just one hand while still aiming with the other. The three mobsters are completely speechless, witnessing that unbelievable display of physical power right in front of them. Giving them zero time to react, the man fires several quick rounds that drop his opponents with surgical precision. As they hit the floor, the last survivor wonders in shock how that monster could see his targets even with the table blocking his view. The operative just walks over calmly and remarks that the foul stench of the Yakuza is so strong he can smell it from a mile away. After clearing the room, the man in the trench coat keeps his cool posture and starts scanning the now silent office. He then sticks the hot barrel of his piece into an ice bucket to cool it down, sending a loud hiss echoing through the room. The scene is now a total disaster, with 5 fallen guys scattered on the floor around the mysterious gray-haired marksman. Meanwhile, the young K watches everything hiding behind the crack of the door, shaking in his boots at the terrifying sight. Noticing the intruder, the operative turns around in the blink of an eye and aims his loaded tool right at K, panicking. The boy throws his hands up immediately and begs for mercy, explaining he was only hired to be the getaway driver. K timidly asks if he is Miss Dahlia, making the operative lower his guard a bit upon realizing the kid is just the hired ride. K replies shakily that he is, trying his best to keep his cool in front of the fearsome specialist. Everything seems peaceful as their car cruises through the city's neon-lit streets under the moonlight. The vehicle speeds down the quiet avenue, leaving the crime scene far behind. Inside the ride, the silence is totally awkward as K focuses on the road and his gray-haired passenger sits motionless in the back. Through the rearview mirror, K sneaks a peek at the mysterious man, feeling a massive amount of pressure just being near him. Catching the stares, the operative asks what's up, making the kid jump and quickly say it's nothing. He tries to play it off by mentioning that a true professional hitman really gives off an insanely intimidating vibe. The gray-haired man doesn't say a word, just glaring coldly with his glowing eye. The tense silence returns to the car as they continue their drive through the night. Even though he's stressed, K can't help himself and says he has a question about what he saw on the first floor of the building. He remembers with horror the fallen women and child on the floor and asks if they were targets too. To the kid's surprise, the passenger answers coldly that they weren't, but he cleared them out anyway just because their screaming would be annoying. He adds that the hired cleanup crew takes care of everyone, so getting rid of random extras costs him absolutely nothing. Kay lets out a nervous chuckle and whispers that the marksman is even worse than the rumors say, being completely ruthless. Hearing the comment, the gray-haired operative simply thinks about the infamous organization known as Funeral Flowers. He then asks how a mere delivery boy knows that name, and Kay reveals his own gang boss told him about the legendary Dahlia. The kid explains what he heard, saying every member of that elite group gets a flower code name, and that receiving a funeral flower in the underworld is basically a guaranteed one-way ticket. The operative looks visibly annoyed at Kay's boss for running his mouth about top-secret organization intel. Even knowing the risk, Kay keeps talking, mentioning that even a living legend like Dahlia has his weaknesses. He stares at the scar on the marksman's face and asks if that mark was from a blade or something similar. Kay thinks out loud that it proves there are monsters out there capable of scratching even an elite operative of their level. The gray-haired man stays dead silent, just staring at the back of the kid's head with a terrifying look. The youth stays focused on the traffic, completely oblivious to the thick tension he just created inside that tight space. The operative finally breaks the silence and starts sharing that, back in the day, there was a guy in the exact same squad as him. He says this guy went by the codename Nightshade, which is actually another name for belladonna, a toxic flower whose meaning is the ultimate parting gift. And living up to that terrifying name, this Nightshade acted like the Grim Reaper himself in human form. However, the relentless warrior made the rookie mistake of disobeying the organization's orders because he lost his mind over a little girl. The gray-haired marksman then reveals, ice cold, that he was the one ordered to permanently pull the plug on his old colleague. Surprisingly, Kay lets out an ironic laugh and asks what that has to do with him. Dahlia then draws his piece lightning fast, points it right at the kid's head, and tells him to take that story straight to the afterlife. Kay fakes total panic and stutters, asking what the operative is talking about. Finger on the trigger, Dahlia takes the safety off, ready to blast without a second thought. The operative explains he noticed Kay's perfect counter-surveillance driving and how he only pretended to check the rearview mirror to see if they were being tailed. He adds that, despite the scared act, the kid isn't actually terrified, because panicked people give off a very specific kind of sweat that he isn't smelling right now. He states coldly that the scent of other people's fear is overwhelming, but Kay has zero trace of it. The gray-haired man is intrigued to see someone stay so incredibly chill, even while staring right down the barrel. He then demands the kid answer once and for all who he really is and where he came from. The youth grips the steering wheel tight, gearing up for his next big move. Completely out of nowhere, Kay yanks the wheel, throwing Dahlia's body to the side. The elite operative is caught off guard by the kid's lightning-fast reflexes. Stomping hard on the brakes, the tires screech loudly as the car drifts violently across the road. The vehicle slides sideways, kicking up a massive cloud of smoke and completely throwing off everyone inside. Dahlia tries to yell, asking what he thinks he's doing, but notices the kid's eyes are now glowing a menacing red. The operative is stunned, realizing the serious danger he just stumbled into. In the middle of the chaos, the car door is kicked open with insane force. Dahlia gets launched out of the moving vehicle, rolling several times across the highway asphalt. He manages to catch himself quickly on his hands and knees, showing off his elite reflexes. While he gets his bearings, Kay's black cap flies through the air right in front of his face. Looking up, Dahlia sees the youth leaping right at him in a deadly aerial takedown. With his eyes glowing red and a blade in hand, Kay lunges like a true apex predator. Blown away by the kid's agility, Dahlia barely has time to react, raising his piece while realizing how incredibly fast he is. A lightning-fast slash cuts through the air toward the marksman. The pinpoint strike hits Dahlia's tool right as he fires, knocking the shot upward. Ticked off that his attack was ruined, the elite operative clicks his tongue. Trying to fire again, he realizes his piece's mechanism actually jammed from the impact of the strike. With his weapon temporarily out of commission, Dahlia jumps back to create some space while Kay lands flawlessly. The youth flashes a cocky smile and explains that big handguns are super sensitive to side impacts, making them super easy to jam. He adds sarcastically that the famous Desert Eagles, despite looking tough, are actually pretty high maintenance. Dahlia tries to quickly fix his piece, but sees the damage is totally real. The veteran operative breaks a cold sweat, realizing the kid calculated and hit that exact weak spot in a fraction of a second, yelling at the kid not to underestimate him. Dahlia charges in furiously for some close-quarters combat. He throws a heavy downward punch with everything he's got. With surgical precision, Kay uses both open hands to deflect the strike flawlessly. The clash between them creates a huge shockwave, proving they are both top-tier fighters with his arm blocked. Dahlia feels a weird sensation and realizes in horror that his arm nerves were severed just by the kid's touch. Kay masterfully dodges his opponent's sloppy punch while setting up his counter. He lands a devastating straight punch right on the elite operative's chin, snapping his head back. Giving him zero time to recover, the youth follows up with another brutal hit that completely shatters Dahlia's guard. To finish the combo, he throws an overhand punch that slams the trenchcoat guy violently into the pavement. Down and coughing up crimson, Dahlia realizes that attack wasn't just raw physical strength. He feels that every impact from that fight was literally melting and destroying his nerves from the inside out. The elite operative recognizes that painful burning sensation, comparing it to the terrible toxin of the belladonna flower. Standing over his beaten opponent, Kay's imposing presence casts the dark shadow of a true apex predator. Dahlia desperately asks who he is, and the youth just mocks him, saying he's still as slow as ever, calling him a weirdo with a smelling fetish. Hearing that ultra-specific nickname, Dahlia's eyes go wide in pure shock and denial. The kid gives a smirk and asks if he finally put two and two together, saying long time no see. The elite operative shakes with dread, repeating to himself that this is absolutely impossible. Kay keeps roasting him, calling him an idiot and saying his tough talk about being the one who took him out was actually just a coward's move. He reminds his rival that he only showed up to scavenge a win when he was already heavily injured and basically fading away. Stuttering, Dahlia screams that it's a lie and that his rival definitely met his end that day, but the kid casually confirms he did in fact check out. He explains with a creepy smile that, through some weird mystery, he ended up coming back in a brand new body. The man in the trench coat stares at the youth. Unable to process this crazy reincarnation story, Dahlia mutters in shock that something this insane could never happen in real life. Ignoring the opponent's whining, the kid kicks his blade back up into the air. He catches the knife flawlessly, ready to deliver the final blow. The gray-haired man then asks if his endgame is revenge, and Kay admits payback wouldn't be bad, but he has other plans. Right then, the image of the abandoned stuffed bunny from that past wasteland flashes in his mind. With cold eyes, he states he actually needs to get back something precious that was stolen from him by that group of scumbags. He solemnly declares that, to reach his goal, he will burn the entire organization known as the Garden to the ground. The veteran operative screams in absolute despair, unable to believe anyone actually has the guts and the power to wipe out such a massive syndicate. Kay seriously notes the fact that the garden's top brass, called the Hanging Flowers, has grown in numbers, meaning there are several other operatives just as skilled as his rival. Even on his way out with a slashed throat, Dahlia chokes out that the kid will never change anything all by himself. With a quick, ruthless motion, the youth finishes the job once and for all in a splash of crimson. The fallen elite operative hits the cold highway asphalt, while the youth walks away without looking back. he just mutters coldly for his damn rival to watch the whole show straight from the underworld. The scene then cuts to a fancy boardroom where several mysterious figures are sitting around a massive table behind a powerful man sitting on a throne. A blonde young woman stands with a blank look as Dahlia's name is brought up. The boss on the throne tells everyone straight up that Dahlia has been eliminated. The green-eyed assistant listens to the news in silence, showing zero emotion. The boss turns his head slightly and asks if she remembers anything important about that whole situation. He makes a point to remind her that Dahlia was the exact guy who took out her benefactor during that awful civil conflict back in the day. The leader proudly claims it was Dahlia who put her savior in the ground. He then starts brainstorming with the other members. If the hit on Dahlia was pulled by the Japanese authorities or some American task force, he taps his fingers thoughtfully on the armrest, considering it might be a totally unexpected enemy. The man closes his eyes for a second, trying to figure out who would have that kind of nerve. Either way, he points out it went down in Japan, which is now considered their new turf. With a threatening glare, he concludes there is a very annoying pest growing right in their backyard. The boss then coldly orders her to send a heads up to the other elite operatives in the syndicate. He sets a super tight deadline of just 1 month to clean up this mess. The boss's order is crystal clear: track down and rip that weed out by the roots once and for all. The scene shifts again to a memory wrapped in flames and massive explosions. Kay starts narrating his own past, recalling that for as long as he can remember, his life was always on the battlefield. He reveals sadly that he never even got the chance to know what his own parents looked like. The boy was just another one of those helpless kids the world usually calls war orphans. Until one fine day, a guy in a suit mysteriously showed up amidst the rubble and gave him an ultimatum. The guy started spinning his piece and told him to choose between just fading away right there in the gutter. With a quick motion, he held the grip of the tool out to the tiny kid. Even though he was way too young to fully grasp the weight of it, he knew he had to make a snap choice to survive. The little boy didn't hesitate to pick the second option of the deal. The man in the suit then taught him to never hesitate, because whoever lacks the guts to take a life is the one who loses theirs. The boy focuses on his brutal training, firing multiple perfect shots dead center into the paper targets. His trainer yells in the background for him to keep moving and use his legs while shooting. He realizes that the group that took him in, known as the Garden, was far from being just a regular crew of hitmen. The organization called themselves defenders of a supposedly noble cause, focused on keeping world order at any cost. Their leaders styled themselves as saviors, secretly pulling the strings of the planet. The youth remembers the group's main targets were cruel dictators, rotting society from the inside. Their hit list also included big cartel bosses, terrorist leaders, and other highly dangerous criminals. They always claimed the hits handed to the funeral flowers were meant to stop catastrophic conflicts before they started. With that excuse in mind, the boy kept training like crazy to become the group's perfect tool. He just followed orders blindly like a ruthless machine, believing he was delivering justice to save innocent lives. His life ran like clockwork, right until the day he decided to break protocol to save one of his target's daughter. Everything fell apart when he found himself cornered and badly wounded in a dark alley. After serving the Garden for 20 years, his whole destiny flipped because of that one choice. He explains to the girl that his nervous system was wrecked by toxic gas after turning on the syndicate, and he feels his time is up. His shaking hand barely listens to his brain due to the brutal effects of the toxin. He hands the girl a piece of paper, telling her a trusted smuggler will be waiting at that spot to get her out safely. He begs her to run away as fast as she can, change her name, and try to start a normal life far away from all this. While doing it, he wonders why he is acting so irrationally and risking his own neck for a stranger. To his absolute shock, the little girl just rips the escape note right down the middle. She looks him dead in the eye and tells him that, no matter what he says, she flat out refuses to leave without him. With her green eyes blazing with determination, she demands to know what she has to do to save him. Faced with that stubborn attitude, the guy finally gives up trying to make her run solo. He realizes it was exactly those eyes that shook him up inside and changed everything. Those bright eyes were the main thing that jammed the gears of his cold, mechanical life. She then dragged him to a makeshift hideout where he laid under blankets surrounded by dozens of vials. Kay remembers that some regular eye drops have trace amounts of stuff that helps fight off the nerve gas poisoning him. Even with only 20 minutes left before the toxin checked him out for good, the girl pulled off something unbelievable. She sprinted across the whole city by herself and managed to scavenge a crazy amount of those bottles just in time to save him. And she did all that in an area swarming with dozens of syndicate thugs hunting them down with no mercy. It was obvious the little girl didn't care about putting her own life on the line just to help him out. The little girl tells the MC to chill and rest up a bit, promising there's no one else around to bother them. The former operative stares at her, intrigued, and asks if she seriously didn't regret throwing away her one ticket out of there. With pure determination, she replies she doesn't need a ticket like that because she knows he'll keep protecting her from now on. With a cold look, he reminds the kid that he's just a hired gun, not her family member or babysitter. But the little girl just pouts at him, something the old operative would have never let slide from anyone else back in the day. Still, he ends up giving in and pats her head, thinking there's nothing worse in the world than owing a favor to a kid. The MC then holds out his pinky and proposes a deal to watch her back until she is completely free. He notices that, right at the end of his bloody career as a cleaner, something shifted inside him. With a massive smile and crying tears of joy, the girl seals the deal, marking the very first real promise the man ever made. Suddenly, an angry voice comes out of nowhere telling him to snap out of it already. The next second, the guy takes a solid punch and gets knocked out of bed hard. Still half asleep, the MC complains to his sister Misaki about it being way too early. Remembering it's been 17 years since his previous life ended, Misaki yells in annoyance that it's already 7:30 in the morning and he's going to be late for school. He apologizes and says he'll get ready fast, while his sister complains he's been sleeping way too much lately, making him reflect on how he now lives the regular life of a high schooler. Right as she's about to leave the room, she stops dead and gives him a serious look that puts him on edge. Misaki points out that, ever since he fell down the stairs and bumped his head, he's been acting super weird. She goes on to say he came home really late last night and his clothes smelled like smoke, leaving him totally speechless. The young man gulps, remembering he had to torch the car to wipe any trace of his fight with Dahlia. Looking suspicious, his sister straight up asks if he's hanging out with sketchy people or doing shady stuff. Panicking, he laughs it off and makes up an excuse that he was at a buddy's barbecue living it up until midnight. Misaki buys none of it and reminds him he always hated veggies, but he quickly defends himself, saying his taste buds flipped after he hit his head. He tries to hide his nerves by going full nerd, explaining that the brain injury totally rewired his preferences overnight. The girl just stands there in dead silence, giving her brother a massive side-eye and not buying a single word. Eventually, she gives up pushing and just tells him to hurry downstairs for breakfast before it gets cold, muttering that he really turned into a weirdo. As soon as the door shuts, the MC sighs in relief, realizing his sister is way too sharp for his own good. He gets up slowly, thinking that from the outside looking in, his new daily routine looks perfectly normal. Even so, he stares at the family photo on the desk and admits this whole thing still feels like a crazy dream. The youth wonders why the consciousness of a guy who met his end 17 years ago ended up in this random student's body. He walks over to the desk and gently picks up the picture frame. Looking at the photo, the guy realizes he didn't hijack this life, because the real Kisaragi K's memories and feelings are still alive and well inside him. It all started with that mystery fall 10 days ago, though he admits that whole day is just a giant blank in his head. The young man questions if that hard hit to the head really rebooted his past life memories, finding the whole idea totally ridiculous and unscientific. Right then, a ping from his computer grabs his attention, snapping him out of his thoughts. He puts the frame back down, knowing he can play detective with his reincarnation later since he has bigger fish to fry right now. With a serious game face on, the MC gets ready to clock in. He sits at the PC and throws on his headset to start a secure call. On the other end, his mystery contact says the data rip he asked for is done, complaining that cracking that firewall was an absolute nightmare. The youth remembers that intel was locked in the chip he swiped from Dahlia's pocket after the highway showdown. He perfectly recalls staring down at his old elite rival laid out on the pavement. At that moment, the guy walked up to the messy scene and patted down the guy's coat looking for clues. Digging through the rival's pocket, he found an old pocket watch and, popping it open, spotted the memory chips stashed in the gears. The MC praises his hacker buddy's speed, thinking it was totally worth tracking down his old underworld contacts. The informant admits he was completely floored when the kid hit him up a week ago after over 10 years off the grid and thought it was insane to ask where Dahlia was. He reveals that at first he wasn't sure if the kid was really the legendary operative from back then, but now there's zero doubt after Dahlia's confirmed elimination. Before handing over the juicy intel, the hacker warns he needs an honest answer to a major question. He brings up how, 17 years ago, the operative blew off a direct order to take out a guy and his kid, paying for that stunt with his own life. With the image of his old partner bleeding out in his head, the informant asks how it's even possible he is still breathing after all, that he also wants to know why the kid is picking a fight again with a syndicate as huge as the garden. The hacker cuts to the chase and asks if this whole revenge tour is about the little girl named Lilia. He reminds him that right after the MC was officially marked as gone, the garden crew swept her away without a trace. The little girl grew up inside the syndicate and ended up becoming a VIP for the top bosses. The informant explains that for the last 17 years, the garden brass just used her as a shiny trophy to show off. But behind all the glitz and glamour, the girl was living like a literal prisoner, with zero actual freedom. Making things worse, he spills that intel says she was always treated super harshly behind closed doors. The hacker wraps up by guessing the kid's real endgame is to bust the girl out of the syndicate's grip for good. Hearing his partner's words, the young man closes his eyes and goes quiet for a second. The image of the little girl smiling brightly in the past flashes in his mind once again. The youth opens his eyes looking dead serious and shuts the topic down cold, saying his buddy doesn't need to know his personal business. He makes sure to remind him their golden rule was always to stay out of other people's secrets. On the other side of the screen, the hacker clicks his mouse and sighs, noting the kid is still as grumpy and blunt as ever. The contact reveals the memory chip held a black bag list with Dahlia's next marks, showing a picture of a high school girl. The guy listens closely to the hacker's intel, looking extremely focused. The scene then shifts to a massive, super expensive, traditional all-girls academy. At the front gates of the elite school, a bunch of students are chatting happily after the final bell. One girl totally steals the spotlight as she walks through the courtyard, with everyone clearing the way and staring in awe. A bunch of classmates start saying goodbye to her with tons of respect, with a sweet smile. The beautiful girl waves back and tells them to get home safe. As she walks away, the students can't hold back their hype and start whispering about how amazing she is. The buzzing and fangirling keep filling the courtyard as she heads for the exit. Outside the gates, the MC is low-key watching the whole thing from under a tree while scrolling on his phone. The screen shows the file on Akari Shidu, a 17-year-old girl whose late dad was a major syndicate boss. The dossier points out she's the sole heir to one of the biggest and most dangerous Yakuza families in the country. Several old news clippings prove just how much pull the third boss of the Shidu clan had in the city, but the kicker is that she's the exact target the Garden organization wants wiped off the map right now. The youth takes stock of his current mess, well aware he's just a regular high schooler going up against a massive global hit squad. He knows his enemies have insane reach, secretly pulling the strings of top politicians and billionaires worldwide. Knowing every Garden elite operative has crazy superhuman stats, he admits charging them head-on without a solid plan would be pure suicide. Because of that, he decides to use this Yakuza heiress drama as his golden ticket to infiltrate. The kid's ultimate endgame is to set up the perfect domino effect to burn the garden to the ground. With his eyes glowing red, he shows he is fully locked in to turn the enemy syndicate into ashes. The MC casually watches the heiress stroll down the sidewalk with her private security trailing her. He pockets his phone, figuring her dad must have spoiled her rotten to stick her in such a posh prep school. He smirks and mutters to himself that babysitting her all day must be a real drag. Suddenly, a sketchy guy in a suit pops up behind him and calls him a bodyguard in a very threatening tone. The dude starts cracking his knuckles and warns him the criminal underworld is no playground, mentioning there's been a lot of rats snooping around the clan lately. The thug glares at him, saying a punk who's never held a piece is gonna get eaten alive, but the MC just calmly thanks him for the pro tip. With a cocky grin and a dangerous glint in his eye, the youth fires back that, unfortunately for him, he's more than ready to make his big comeback to the dark side. The Yakuza muscle decides to drag him into an empty alley, noting they are finally far enough from the main street. The guy aggressively rolls up his sleeves and demands to know who the kid is working for and why he's stalking the young miss. Without breaking a sweat, the MC looks back and answers coolly that she wasn't exactly his main target. The suit scoffs at the kid's answer and raises his fists, saying he doesn't need to play nice. The guard gets into a fighting stance and barks that he's gonna beat the answers out of him. He throws a fast jab right at the kid's face, but the MC effortlessly dodges by just tilting his head. Watching the guy move, the MC clinically notes the dude's style is straight-up boxing, totally ticked off that he missed. The thug roars and starts throwing a wild flurry of punches at the air. He yells in frustration, seeing the student dodge every single swing without a scratch. The security guy steps in, dead set on landing a knockout blow on the kid in the cap. But the MC pulls off a flawless dodge using some insanely fast footwork. The man screams for the punk to stop messing around and puts his entire body weight into a brutal right hook. With superhuman reflexes, the youth just reaches out and catches the guy's fist midair like it's nothing. Keeping the dude's arm totally locked down, the MC readies his free hand for a nasty counter. In a split second, he shoots his hand forward and grabs the guard by the throat, leaving him completely paralyzed with shock. Giving him zero chance to fight back, the youth uses all his strength to slam the guy's neck right into the alley floor. Totally pinned and gasping for air, the guard just struggles helplessly under the kid who easily overpowered him. The MC looks down coldly at the guy and tells him to chill out since they aren't enemies. The Yakuza thug just grinds his teeth in rage, feeling super humiliated getting easily clapped by a high schooler. Suddenly, a bossy voice rings out from the start of the alley, ordering him to knock it off right now. Pinned to the floor, the guy recognizes the voice and desperately calls out for the clan's young heiress. The girl walks calmly toward them while the MC keeps the guard completely pinned down. She stares the stranger down and demands he let Katagiri go immediately. Under his cap, the boy smirks, thinking this girl actually has some serious guts to look at him like that. The youth agrees to let the guard go, but drops the condition that she has to hear him out first. He releases Katagiri right away and suggests they grab some tea to chat, which makes the bodyguard absolutely furious at the sheer audacity. The heiress closes her eyes for a second to read the room and weigh the kid's weird proposal. She then turns around and just tells the kid to follow her. The three of them walk in dead silence through a quiet, narrow residential street. They head down some wooden stairs leading to a cozy little joint called Cafe and Bar Savannah. Sitting at a table, the MC compliments the vibe, but casually mentions this humble spot doesn't really fit a rich girl's lifestyle. The bodyguard is still standing next to the table, fists clenched and fuming, but the heiress raises a hand to chill him out and says to cut to the chase. The young lady elegantly holds her warm teacup, getting ready to hear whatever this random guy has to say. Akari takes a graceful sip and states the boy obviously approached her for a very specific reason. The MC drops the bomb straight up, saying she isn't his main target, but a pro-operative is currently hunting her. He looks at them dead serious and notes she probably already knows exactly why she's in the crosshairs. The youth stares at the girl, saying she wouldn't roll with such heavy muscle if she didn't know the risks, but warns that Katagiri will never be able to stop the funeral flowers hearing the name of the elite hit squad. The heiress's eyes go wide in absolute shock. The boy explains these enemies are absolute masters of their craft, and not even a whole army of Yakuza would stand a chance against them. Akari glares at him suspiciously, trying to figure out how a random student knows so much black market intel. Katagiri leans over the table super tense and straight up demands to know who he is and where he got that classified info. The MC keeps his totally chill poker face vibe despite their grilling. He clarifies he doesn't consider himself their buddy, but makes it crystal clear he is their enemy's worst nightmare. With a sarcastic grin, the youth announces he's going to wipe out the funeral flowers to keep her safe, and in return, he gets to crash at her family's mansion for a bit. Absolutely losing it over the kid's nerve, the guard slams the table, stands up, and tells him to quit playing games. With an incredibly dark and terrifying glare, the MC coldly warns the guy not to try anything stupid. Right then, the kid unleashes an aura so heavy and dangerous it freezes them both in pure terror. Feeling the crushing weight of that monster's presence, the bodyguard breaks into a cold sweat, realizing the real danger sitting across from him. Unable to say another word, the man swallows his pride and slowly sits back down, completely overpowered. Shaking it off, Akari looks at him seriously and asks why she should ever believe his crazy story. The MC then brings up the recent mess in Yokohama, leaking that the ones who took out 3 of her top executives were the funeral flowers. Katagiri is floored, arguing that recent tragedy hasn't even hit the news or TV yet. The kid adjusts his cap and explains the media got bought off to cover it up, then asks if the victims didn't all get dropped by a desert eagle. The youth reveals with pinpoint accuracy that the shooter behind that massacre was an operative codenamed Dahlia. The bodyguard starts sweating bullets and demands to know how a high schooler could possibly know such highly classified details. In response, the MC pulls a massive piece with a silencer out of his jacket, slaps it on the table, and casually drops that he already dealt with Dahlia. While they sit there in shock, he suggests they hit up their dirty cops to run a ballistics check on the weapon. He guarantees the rounds will be a perfect match to the ones pulled from the executives, and casually adds he also wiped out the cleanup crew sent to scrub the scene. Katagiri points a shaky finger at the hardware and asks if the kid wasn't actually the one who took out the 3 clan bosses. The youth leans back on the sofa and sarcastically asks if he would really go through all this trouble to chat if his only goal was to eliminate the young miss. The heiress locks eyes with the MC for a few seconds, trying to read his real motives behind that cocky attitude. To her bodyguard's absolute shock, the girl stands up and officially declares she's buying the kid's story. She takes charge and orders them to head back to the mansion immediately, telling Katagiri to get the car ready. The guard jumps to it and preps the ride, driving them all toward Akari's massive traditional family estate at sundown. Inside the mansion, the heiress takes a seat while Katagiri stays right by her side. On high alert, the bodyguard complains out loud, saying he is 100% against letting such a sketchy dude inside their home. Right then, the MC slides the door open and casually strolls in, commenting on how ridiculously huge the Yakuza pad is. He walks around checking out the decor and asks if the tricolor antique vase in the second-floor hallway is the real deal. Ticked off by the kid's nerve, the guard yells, asking who said he could wander around, while the heiress quietly confirms the vase is legit. The MC ignores the yelling and starts listing their entire security setup, noting they only have one guy at the main gate and 2 squads patrolling the yard. He breaks down the exact patrol routes and blind spots of the guys watching the outside perimeter. The youth adds there's only one more guy sitting in the central security room watching the cameras. Hearing that surgical breakdown, Katagiri stutters in panic, asking how the kid figured all that out so fast. The kid in the cap glances at the girl and says, wearing a vest makes sense, but warns that level 2 armor is basically just a good luck charm against the guys coming for her. Akari just watches him in silence, amazed that he picked up on so many security details after just a few minutes in the house looking dead serious. He warns that the guys heading their way aren't your average street thugs and orders her to clear out all the staff right now. Meanwhile, down in the damp, dark city sewers, some rats scatter through the pipes. A black high heel steps down hard into a puddle in that gloomy tunnel, signaling someone sketchy has arrived. A woman with long braided hair walks calmly through the pitch-black underground system. She flashes a cruel, creepy smile with glowing eyes, gripping a curved blade ready to do some damage. Back at the mansion, the MC doubles down on his advice and repeats she needs to pull all her men out for their own good. Katagiri loses his cool and yells, asking why they should follow such a crazy order from a total stranger. With a cold stare, the kid explains normal guys would be totally useless against the funeral flowers and would just get dropped for nothing, only getting in his way. Furious, the bodyguard grabs the kid by the collar and barks that they are pros who put their lives on the line for the young Miss Akari steps in like a boss and orders Katagiri to let him go and do exactly what he says. Seeing her guard hesitate, the young lady gives him a sweet smile and asks him to please trust her call. Out of options, the guy lets go of the kid and agrees to clear out the whole property. Outside, the other clan guards ask if they are seriously abandoning post, but Katagiri tells them to shut it, saying it's a direct order from the boss. The guard comes back inside and says he sent all the staff home just like the MC asked, but he grips his combat baton tight and announces he's staying to fight, since the young miss said he could do whatever he wanted. The MC respects the hustle, but admits to the girl he didn't expect her to play along and trust his word so easily. The heiress closes her eyes and confesses that, even though she has no clue what the funeral flowers are, she knew her regular guards would be useless against pro hitmen. She looks at the guys seriously and concludes that when it comes to dealing with professional operatives, the best bet is to hire another operative. The MC turns to her, intrigued, and asks what makes her so sure he's actually a pro. Akari answers straight up that she knows because she's seen a real monster in action right in front of her before. She explains that the cold stare he gave when he pinned Katagiri in the alley was exactly like the one that monster had. The girl describes them as eyes entirely locked onto the present moment. Zero cares about the past or the future. The youth adjusts his cap quietly as he hears her compare his vibe to a wild beast stalking its prey, but she adds that she noticed a tiny difference in his eyes that really caught her attention. The heiress stands up and says the MC's eyes didn't have that same dead, mechanical emptiness that only wants to take lives. She reveals she could feel a huge amount of heat and burning determination deep in his gaze. The young woman saw he was holding on to some serious, deep-rooted anger and an insane drive to reach his goal. She wraps up saying it was exactly that overwhelming obsession that made her make her call. With total confidence, she states that was the main reason she decided to put all her chips on him. The MC lets out a thoughtful hum, totally getting her red on him. He then asks about the operative who had that same look, and Akari reveals it was the woman who took out her dad, the old Shidu boss. The girl remembers her dad's face and sadly shares that she watched the whole brutal hit happen with her own eyes. Curious about the details, the guy asks what the mystery cleaner looked like and how she acted. Akari describes the attacker as a super elegant older lady who had this incredibly warm smile, acting like she was just catching up with an old childhood friend. She remembers how the old lady casually strolled right up to her dad in the mansion's office. The heiress recalls in horror the insane speed at which his personal guards were dropped in a literal crimson shower. She points out that even while causing all that carnage, the old woman never dropped that sweet smile for a second. completely ice cold. The woman slashed the throats of every guard who tried to protect the boss that night. The MC tells her to hold up a sec and asks if the blade the old lady used had a very specific engraving. He straight up asks if the weapon didn't have a red spider lily etched into it. Akari is totally blown away and asks in shock how the kid could possibly know such a tiny detail about the weapon. The youth gets a dark look in his eye as he confirms the red spider lily symbol was definitely there. He is shook, realizing that the dangerous veteran from his past is still active and working for the syndicate. Suddenly, the loud ticking of an old grandfather clock echoes through the room, breaking the silence. The young heiress instantly goes on high alert and warns him nervously that something feels very wrong in the house. The MC turns quickly and asks what weird thing she just noticed. Right at that moment, the terrifying old lady strolls down the crimson-stained wooden hallway and sadistically asks if they are ready to chat. Right behind her, Katagiri drops to his knees, badly hurt and clutching his bleeding arm after getting ambushed. The old lady checks out the place and mocks how the empty mansion looks just like a spiderweb. She walks slowly down the empty halls, bragging that she can easily spot the traps set up everywhere. The woman leans over the injured guard and demands he spill who else is hiding, or else, flashing sharp golden needles between her fingers, she threatens to start some nasty torture to get him talking. The bodyguard grinds his teeth in pain, trying to hold out as the shiny weapon gets closer to his face. With a sick smile, whispering right in his ear, the veteran asks if he's finally ready to sing. Out of nowhere, Akari charges from behind gripping a katana, swinging with everything she's got to save her guy. The young heiress puts her heart into the strike, but the veteran blocks it without breaking a sweat. Panting heavily from the effort, the girl tries to catch her breath while the enemy roasts her terrible stamina. Katagiri screams for his young boss to get back and not try to solo that monster. Akari holds her stance with her sword up, while the old lady just looks at her like she's a fun little toy. The veteran uses her metal needles to casually lock down the katana blade like it's nothing. The Yakuza girl grits her teeth, totally frustrated that her attack was completely shut down. The old lady flashes a creepy grin and cheers that the girl showing up just saved her a bunch of time. She fondly remembers how fast she usually drops her targets during her hits. The woman says she remembers Akari perfectly and brings up the time. The little girl peeked at her through the closet doors. She notes with a dark look that the young heiress grew up and got the exact same intense eyes as her late father. The old lady stares at the girl's hateful glare and sadistically comments, "Those eyes look absolutely delicious to rip out." But the veteran's smug face instantly drops into panic when she feels an overwhelming presence creeping up behind her. Moving purely on instinct, she leaps backward to get away from the immediate threat. The old lady lands defensively, getting her guard up and gripping her needles while scanning the room. Akari and her guard look stunned at the enemy's sudden reaction, having no clue what made her jump back like that. A calm, bored voice echoes down the hall, announcing the heiress's real backup has arrived. The MC casually walks up to them and complains that he wishes she would act more like a lady who actually needs saving. Giving off a super dark vibe with his red eyes glowing in the shadows, the kid radiates a terrifying killer aura. The veteran watches him step up, realizing right away this isn't some average high schooler. She tightens her grip on her curved blade with the spider lily symbol, bracing for the real fight. The MC stares her down cold, showing absolutely zero fear of the Garden Elite's reputation. He walks slowly down the hall wrapped in dark, scary energy that makes the floor literally feel like it's shaking. The youth finally steps in front of Akari and Katagiri like a shield, locking eyes with the opponent's deadly blade. Akari and her guard gulp hard, sweating buckets as the tension in the room hits the boiling point. The MC stands his ground, acting like an unbreakable wall between his injured team and the nightmare standing in front of them. The old lady studies him closely and realizes this kid definitely knows some high-level combat tactics. She recalls the fighting theory that says you should never take a standard defensive stance against someone with a knife. The reason is pretty simple. Trying to block a sharp blade barehanded is pretty much impossible. Plus, human arms have major arteries, meaning a single slash could easily be game over. Because of that, the pro move is to intentionally drop your own guard. By doing that, you bait the enemy into attacking your chest or neck, and the second they overextend, you get your window. The defender then uses that sloppy rush to land a fatal counterattack. The veteran knows full well that understanding the theory is one thing, but pulling it off in real life takes an insane level of skill. She stares at the kid standing completely relaxed in front of her weapon, offering zero standard defense. Knowing he's fishing for a counter, the old lady decides to play it super safe, but gets totally caught off guard when he throws his own cap as a distraction. The woman's eyes go wide, completely bamboozled by such a random, cheap trick. taking advantage of the distraction. The MC rushes in and throws a fast sweep to trip her up. The veteran uses her crazy reflexes to jump and balance herself mid-air, blade still in hand. They both slide back across the wooden floor, resetting the distance between them. The MC smirks and jokes that he really thought that cheesy move would catch her slipping. Laughing it off, the old lady praises the kid's guts, saying she's impressed a punk had the nerve to swing first. But she checks herself and asks if he was aiming for her common fibular nerve with that kick. She looks at him dead serious and says, it's been a minute since she last fought someone who actually knows silat. That specific weak point right above the knee causes instant numbness and shuts down the leg if hit hard, which is a core silat move. The youth smiles confidently and gives her props for figuring out his entire style from just one kick. Looking super annoyed, the woman admits his fighting style and his smart mouth remind her of a really annoying guy from back in the day. The veteran's mind flashes back over 20 years to when she had retired from active duty and worked as a garden combat instructor. The memory shows a training knife clattering against the floor of a sparring room. Back then, a younger version of the instructor was explaining that the move isn't about brute strength, but about finding the natural flow in a fight. She was telling her tiny student he needed to let the blade glide smoothly, just going with the flow of the enemy's moves. Little red-eyed Nightshade just listened to her in silence while rubbing his sore neck. Seeing the stubborn kid wasn't really buying it, the young woman grabbed her weapon and agreed to spar a bit more. She then lunged with a fast overhead strike to test the kid's reflexes for real. In the flashback, the little kid casually blocks his mentor's attack and smiles, saying he finally got the hang of it. With his red eyes glowing, the young student dares her to keep going and teach him the next trick. The woman remembers being absolutely terrified, realizing the kid was a total freak who could perfectly copy any fighting style. She reveals the kid blew past her decades of experience after seeing the move exactly once, which made her quit teaching the very next day to go back to being an active operative. The veteran felt she needed to sharpen her real-world skills so she'd never get embarrassed like that again. Her goal coming out of retirement was to perfect her true dance of death under the moonlight, snapping back to the present. The old lady locks her cold eyes on the MC as she preps her ultimate move. She lunges super fast at the kid, who just stands there waiting for it. Watching her charge in, the MC casually thinks out loud that he actually never really hated her back in the day. He wiggles his fingers and brings up her old advice about breaking the enemy's will to fight before going for the heart, calling it a solid lesson. Hearing that hyper-specific quote, the old lady's eyes bug out in absolute shock and panic as she finally figures out who she's fighting. Capitalizing on her split-second hesitation, the MC moves at terrifying speed and lands a perfect strike. The woman looks down, totally confused, unable to process how crazy fast that counter was. In a blink, the youth completely shatters the veteran's offensive stance. He lands a pinpoint hit right on her wrist, shutting down any chance she had to defend watching from the sidelines. His allies are hyped and amazed, seeing the kid actually disarm her. The deadly blade slips from her fingers and goes spinning through the air in the hallway. The MC tracks the weapon mid-air, grabs it tight, and goes for the final slash. He executes a lightning-fast move, slashing the enemy cleanly with her own tool. The youth finishes the combo with a dead-eyed stare as crimson splashes in the background. Even wounded, the old lady screams in pure rage and wildly charges the kid, using her arms like deadly whips. She unleashes a crazy, high-speed flurry of strikes, popping her joints in a totally bizarre and unnatural way. The MC calmly dodges the hits and notes that her signature fighting style, known as Ivy, is still just as sharp as it used to be. Her freakish ability to pull off impossible moves comes from a birth defect that makes her joints loose and her tendons insanely flexible. That crazy flexibility is the trademark that made the veteran operative famous in the underworld as Lycoris. She tries to get her main weapon back while fixing her stance to face the kid. Lycoris points her blade at the youth and asks if he really is the reincarnation of her legendary late student. With a cocky smirk and a tiny scratch on his neck, the kid asks sarcastically what she's going to do about it if he is. The veteran goes completely silent, staring at the guy with a mix of doubt and anxiety. She tries to wrap her head around it, totally unable to grasp how this random high schooler could have the soul and the skills of her old syndicate's best operative. The operative hides her face in the shadows and admits all her combat instincts are screaming that it's true. The terrifying shadow of the legendary monster from her past seems to loom right behind the kid, leaving her completely mesmerized. She cracks a crazy smile, realizing the kid in front of her is the exact same genius rival she spent her whole life chasing the old lady attacks, feeling like his moves are even more beautiful and faster than they were during their old training days. She pulls off a crazy mid-air spin, flashing her blade right at the kid's neck with her eyes glowing a chilling blue. She tells him to witness her absolute masterpiece of combat. The veteran unleashes a devastating combo of acrobatic attacks to corner him once and for all. She pulls off her ultimate signature move mid-air, known on the streets as the terrifying dance of death. Watching this insane showdown from the back, Katagiri and Akari start fully panicking, unable to even comprehend that unnatural attack. The MC keeps his cool and reminds himself not to get distracted by how she swings the weapon, because the only real danger is the tip of the blade. The youth then starts blocking the crazy flurry of hits using his bare arms, taking some light scratches in the process. The Yakuza guard is blown away, saying the moves are way too fast to see, while the heiress watches in awe as the kid literally parries a sword with his fists. But the young lady knows damn well that sketchy defense won't hold up forever against the enemy's power. The guy keeps dodging the lethal strikes, but starts taking deeper cuts, making his crimson splash down the hall. He grits his teeth in frustration over his new student body's limits, knowing he would have never gotten tagged if he still had his old stats. Suddenly, the MC's eyes widen in shock as a weird, paralyzing feeling takes over his muscles. Lycoris laughs in his face and reminds him that the red spider lily sap on her blade is highly toxic, something any pro-operative should already know. She tells the kid not to sweat it, since that specific toxin was only made to cause super painful temporary muscle paralysis. The deadly flower's venom quickly pumps through the kid's veins, completely locking up his reflexes. Sure that she's got it in the bag, the veteran charges in, yelling that she's gonna be the one to personally end his story. The MC loses his footing and groans in pain, feeling his legs totally give out on the wooden floor. The veteran operative sees her perfect opening and screams in triumph, winding up for the final blow. Wrapping up the relentless combo of her secret art, she puts everything she's got into the thrust. She drives the sharp blade straight for the kid's chest in a surgical strike meant to drop him instantly. The weapon cuts through the air insanely fast, aiming dead center at the paralyzed youth. Looking completely unhinged, the old lady celebrates prematurely, screaming she finally won this deadly match, but a massive shockwave of energy explodes down the mansion's wooden hallway. The veteran's smug smile is instantly wiped off her face when she realizes something went horribly wrong with her ultimate strike. Her eyes bulge in pure terror when she looks over and feels an overwhelming presence she never thought she'd see again. Right before her terrified eyes, the shadow of a dark demon with glowing red eyes materializes, freezing her in pure panic. In the blink of an eye, Kei grabs the enemy by the throat with insane strength, completely shutting down her attack. The youth slams her into the ground, his eyes glowing red with an absolutely terrifying glare. Lycoris lets out a choked scream of pain and coughs up crimson against that totally crushing force. While she freaks out on the floor, the curved knife she dropped starts falling toward them with unbelievable reflexes. Kei reaches out with his free hand and catches the weapon perfectly. Without a second of hesitation, the youth drives the poisoned blade right into the old lady's chest. Lycoris stares the kid right in the face, sweating cold and looking like a mix of pure hatred and disbelief. Even while coughing up crimson and struggling to breathe, she tries to keep her eyes locked on him. Kei looks down at her and coldly says she still wasn't quite fast enough to catch him this time. Feeling her life slip away, the old lady grits her teeth and promises they will run it back in the underworld. She gives one last creepy smile and says they'll meet right on the banks of the Sanzu River. Lycoris finally runs out of gas and passes away on the floor, surrounded by red petals. With Kei standing over her fallen body, watching the brutal ending from the sidelines, Akari and Katagiri are absolutely speechless. But once the adrenaline wears off, Kei's leg starts shaking uncontrollably from the toxin. The youth lets out a massive sigh, trying to catch his breath after going full throttle. Katagiri runs over looking stressed and asks if he actually got poisoned by the old lady's blade. Kei admits he's feeling pretty rough, explaining he only managed to slow down the toxin by controlling his breathing. This tactical breathing is a trick special forces use to stay frosty in super sketchy situations. By using it, Kei managed to slow his heart rate and blood flow to delay the paralyzing venom, while Katagiri offers to call the Shido group's underground dock. But the MC shoots the idea down immediately, reminding him that anybody using poison always carries the antidote on them. He starts patting down the fallen operative, leaving the other two totally confused about what he's looking for. A second later, the youth stands up holding a gold pocket watch and announces he just found a major clue. Kei looks closely at the mystery item, confident he can finally crack this whole case wide open. With this clue, he plans to figure out exactly who put the hit on him and why. While Akari watches quietly, the scene shifts to the outside of the Shido group's traditional estate under the dark night sky. Inside, Katagiri is looking super deep in thought and stressed as the room goes dead quiet. A medkit loaded with bandages and meds is laid open on the tatami mat. Akari takes it upon herself to carefully patch up her bodyguard's arm. The young lady lets out a sigh of relief, happy that the first aid is finally done. But Katagiri looks at her super worried and asks if she's really okay, suggesting they should just drop this dangerous mission immediately. Flashing back to the insane fight he just watched, Katagiri realizes Kei is definitely not a normal human being. The guard thinks about how the kid's destructive power is on a completely different level from any street fight or gang war he's ever seen. Feeling totally useless, the guy grits his teeth and hates the fact that he isn't strong enough to fix this. He clenches his beaten, bloody fist, bitterly admitting his own skills aren't enough to keep the heiress safe. Akari gives him a sad, concerned look after hearing her loyal guard vent. Katagiri goes on to say that even though they survived tonight, she's still got a massive target on her back, so he can't let his late boss's daughter get dragged into a world of monsters. With a heavy heart, the man begs her to run far away and lay low in a safe house until the heat dies down. Suddenly, a voice from the doorway says, "Running away is definitely a solid option right now." Katagiri jumps out of his skin and asks, totally freaked out, how the kid sneaked in without making a sound. The two youths exchange a serious, quiet look as the room gets super tense again. Kei breaks the silence, stating coldly that she isn't just some innocent schoolgirl. She's the direct heir to a massive syndicate. The brutal truth is that the Shido family's bloody legacy is permanently stamped on her life. He adds that this harsh reality is basically a curse, and no matter where she runs, it's gonna catch up to her eventually. Ticked off by how cold the kid sounds, Katagiri snaps, yelling at him not to talk like he knows anything about their lives. Ignoring the guard's outburst, Kei holds up his laptop and drops the bomb that he finally tracked down the client who ordered the hit. Hearing that massive reveal, both Akari and her guard go wide-eyed in total shock. The youth explains he had an informant rip the data from the gold pocket watch as fast as humanly possible. Smirking under his cap, the guy teases them, asking if they aren't dying to know who it is. Sitting on the mat, the bodyguard tells him to quit stalling and just spill the beans already. Kei then drops the name Masaya Kuroki, a 34-year-old underboss for the Shido clan's sworn brothers, asking if they know the guy. Katagiri is absolutely floored and yells that this has to be a sick joke. Akari gets super serious and mentions her late dad took this guy in a few years back, and he shot up the ranks faster than anyone else. The bodyguard adds that Kuroki is an absolute genius when it comes to running the underworld's dirty money. He explains the traitor built his financial empire by running a bunch of illegal casinos and underground fight clubs. Thanks to those cash cows, he kicked huge amounts of money up to the gang, basically guaranteeing his spot on the executive board. Kei figures Kuroki clearly wasn't happy just waiting his turn, so he hired Dahlia and Lycoris to fast-track his hostile takeover. The youth breaks it down, saying those two operatives belong to the terrifying global syndicate known as the Garden. The traitor's crazy plan was to team up with the hit squad to wipe out the old boss and all his loyal top guys. In the middle of this ruthless plot, the old boss's daughter also ended up on the chopping block, with the path completely clear. Kuroki's endgame was to hijack the organization and use the Shido clan to rule the entire country's underworld. This whole conspiracy was carefully set up so Kuroki could take over the clan while staying safe under the Garden's massive umbrella. With his eyes glowing red under his cap, Kei takes the moment to declare his one true life goal is to completely wreck everything the Garden touches. He then turns straight to the heiress, asking her dead seriously what her next move is going to be now that she knows everything. Faced with the choice of whether to keep running from her fate, Akari closes her eyes for a second to think it over. Looking fully resolved, the girl stands up from the tatami mat, showing she's already made her call. She walks slowly over to the window, stares out into the dark night, and says it would be pathetic to just turn her back on all of this. Katagiri instantly panics and begs his young boss out loud not to do anything reckless. The heiress looks back slightly, thanking her guard from the bottom of her heart for his endless loyalty, but says the game has changed. She argues that running away like a coward without even finding out who ordered the hit on her parents is completely unacceptable. With her blue eyes shining with absolute resolve, the young heiress flat out says a lame choice like that isn't the Shido family way. Seeing the girl totally locked in, Kei gives a small, satisfied smirk, noting she's found her grit. Akari looks at him seriously and confesses she actually never planned on running away to begin with. She owns up to the fact that the massive mansion and the crazy wealth her dad left behind weren't built legally, accepting that she herself isn't entirely innocent. With cold fury in her eyes, the girl declares she'll take whatever karma comes her way later, but absolutely refuses to hand the Shido clan over to a backstabbing coward. Hearing that brave speech, Kei looks genuinely impressed and respects her attitude. Crossing her arms, Akari mentions she still doesn't even know her savior's name, and he just tells her to call him Kei. He casually adds, it isn't about trust, but rather keeping her from knowing too much dangerous info for her own good. Getting the hint. Akari holds out her right hand to the guy, officially hiring him to be the muscle she needs to crush Kuroki. She proposes that his payment will be exactly what he wants, the total and absolute destruction of the garden. The girl promises to throw the entire weight and resources of the Shido clan behind his master plan. Kei looks at her hand with a huge, satisfied grin, knowing this is a deal he can't pass up. After all, having a powerhouse like the Shido clan backing him means he gets access to insane underworld resources that includes a massive spy network wired into every branch of organized crime and absolutely ridiculous funding. Plus, the Yakuza family's deep connections secretly reach all the way to the top of the country's politics and business world. The MC knows full well there isn't a better ally in all of Japan to help him steamroll the garden once and for all, with the deal locked in. The two teenagers shake hands firmly, making their dangerous alliance official. The scene cuts to a super fancy penthouse in the middle of the bright city skyline late at night. Inside his luxury spot, the trader Masaya Kuroki sips wine, looking stressed about why Lycoris has ghosted him since she went on the job. He looks into the dark corner of the room and asks the silent figure hanging out with him what she thinks about the radio silence. Stepping into the dim light, a blonde girl with a totally dead-eyed stare wearing a blue hoodie is called by her codename, Campanula. Campanula gives the trader a side-eye, showing off icy blue eyes with absolutely zero emotion. Kuroki takes a sip and asks, kinda annoyed if she really hasn't heard back from the rest of the crew. The blonde snaps back, making it clear that babysitting that old fossil isn't part of her job description. The trader guesses the veteran might have been salty about getting assigned a hit on a random high schooler since she has a weird ego. But in a lightning-fast, totally silent move, Campanula reacts to his trash talk dangerously. She quietly seethes and tells him to shut his mouth, while Kuroki backs up, freaked out, asking if the old lady ended up getting wrecked, just like Dahlia. He keeps complaining, mocking how they are always hyped up as the baddest operatives around, but clearly aren't all that Kuroki claims. It's all just big talk, but gets cut off instantly by a harsh warning that he's said enough. In a blink, Campanula is right up in his personal space with a tiny razor-sharp blade pressed right against his throat. The guy freezes completely in terror, gulping hard as he realizes how insanely fast she got the drop on him. The operative glares at him up close with her glowing blue eyes and strictly warns him not to get it twisted because they are only helping him to serve the garden's agenda. She makes it crystal clear that the funeral flowers aren't his personal chess pieces, forcing the traitor to swallow his pride and apologize immediately. The blonde pulls the blade away, leaving a tiny scratch on his neck, and coldly tells him to watch his step next time. With the vibe in the penthouse completely wrecked, Campanula turns around and casually heads for the door. Under her hood, the young operative smirks, enjoying putting the arrogant mob boss back in his place. Kuroki touches his bleeding neck and tries to chill out, telling himself a random schoolgirl surviving doesn't ruin his master plan at all. He stares out at the city from his penthouse, reassuring himself that all the old-school executives in his way are already dead and gone. Flashing an evil grin, the villain celebrates that the Shido clan is finally his, and he's gonna use it to unite the entire criminal underworld. Meanwhile, Campanula smiles sadistically in the hallway, reminding herself that everything they do is strictly for the garden. The story skips ahead 2 nights, showing the busy, neon-lit skyscrapers in downtown Japan inside a high-end, packed underground casino. A bunch of rich high rollers are crowded around the tables listening to the chips clinking. The gold roulette wheel spins fast while cards get dealt super quick across the blue felt tables. An older, filthy, rich businessman puffs his cigar celebrating next to a gorgeous date in a stunning red dress. Suddenly, the main doors swing open, and a beautiful young woman in a white dress and elegant heels gets VIP treatment from the staff. It's Akari, walking like an absolute boss through the main floor, flanked by Kei and Katagiri, who are rocking sharp black suits. The MC gives the heiress a subtle look, showing they are totally ready to kick off the covert op. They stroll confidently right toward the fancy doors leading to the VIP room. With his eyes glowing a menacing red, Kei notes mentally that this is step 1 of their massive counterattack to light a fire right inside the trader's castle. In the background, the hype of the casino floor and the slot machines keeps going strong, totally covering up their entrance. At the table, the dealer shuffles the deck like a pro, kicking off a round that's about to flip the whole underworld upside down. Back on the loud casino floor, the guests are drinking and having a good time, totally clueless about what's coming. The crew walks slowly through the fancy crowd. Catching a few side eyes, Akari carries herself with so much class that people start whispering about who she might be. Some guests quietly comment she looks way too young to be there, while one guy tries to remember where he's seen her face before. Super stressed about the heat, Katagiri whispers to his guys that they are drawing way too much attention. Rocking a confident smirk, Kei says everything is going exactly according to plan. To explain this crazy move, the story jumps back 2 days to the Shido family estate. The trio is sitting around a low table in the traditional tatami room hashing out their strategy. Out of nowhere, Katagiri loses his mind, slams the table, and asks if the kid has completely lost the plot. The bodyguard yells, asking why the young boss has to march straight into enemy territory, but Kei calmly explains it's absolutely necessary to save the clan. Still fuming, Katagiri argues that if the goal is just to take out the traitor, the kid could easily do it solo. Kei breaks it down, asking what he thinks would happen right after if they just offed the traitor while the girl stayed hiding at home. He logically points out that with the veteran bosses and Kuroki gone, the Shido clan would completely implode from a civil war and get eaten alive by rival gangs. Katagiri grinds his teeth, realizing the kid's logic is totally bulletproof and he has no comeback. Kei keeps going, asking how the grunts would react if Akari, the one true heir, stepped up and challenged the traitor to his face. The guy claims that by pulling a total boss move like that, it would be painfully obvious to everyone in the syndicate who actually deserves to run things. He guarantees that if she flexes like that and claims the throne, the entire clan will fall in line, no questions asked. Totally sold on the kid's playbook, Akari orders her guard to hit up a tailor in Motomachi ASAP. She states she needs a custom dress rushed right now, something actually worthy of the biggest night of their lives. Seeing the heiress completely locked in, Kei gives a small smirk, loving the energy. Back in the present at the casino, a grunt walks up to Kuroki on the couch and whispers some intel. The traitor's face drops instantly, and he asks, completely shocked if the clan heiress seriously had the guts to show up at his spot. The thug confirms it, saying she only brought 2 guards, making the villain groan in annoyance that she somehow survived. Campanula cracks a sadistic smile while scrolling on her phone and cheerfully offers to step outside and handle the girl right now. But Kuroki shuts it down quickly, warning her not to cause a scene in front of the high rollers so they don't ruin the club's fancy reputation. He orders the staff to just treat her like a regular guest for now, saying there's no need to roll out the red carpet yet. The grunt nods and leaves the villains to plot their next move in the VIP room out on the floor. Katagiri whispers to Kei that Kuroki not showing up to greet the boss basically proves the rumors about him flipping. Kei scans the room calculatingly and says they need to drag the rat out of his safe house before doing anything crazy. Akari gives a small nod, showing she's completely in sync with her savior's game plan. Akari walks elegantly across the floor, casually mentioning she wants to have some fun at the tables. The trio rolls up to one of the most exclusive, high-stakes tables where a bunch of big shots are already deep in their games. The dealer bows politely and humbly apologizes to the newcomer. He respectfully explains the minimum buy-in for this specific table is a cool 1 million yen, while the other players smirk at her. Without saying a word, Kei steps up and drops a heavy metal briefcase right on the table. Akari says she doesn't care about the minimum because she hates playing small, revealing massive stacks of top-tier chips that leave everyone speechless. Completely blown away by the flex, the dealer bows even lower and apologizes profusely for the mix-up. He quickly grabs the deck and starts shuffling like a pro, getting the blackjack game going. The dealer slides the first card across the blue felt and wishes everyone good luck. An hour later, the vibe at the table has totally flipped, with the other players sweating, stressed out, and mind blown by what's happening. The whole room starts crowding around the table to stare at the insane mountain of chips Akari keeps racking up. The dealer announces with a shaky voice that bets are closed for this final round. Akari's cards add up to 11, and the heiress stays completely chill, unbothered, and locked in. Across the table, the dealer starts sweating bullets and breathing heavily, feeling the insane pressure. He reveals his own cards, then pulls one more from the shoe trying to beat her score. Clenching his teeth in pure panic, the guy knows he has absolutely zero margin for error here. The man's hand is visibly shaking as he hesitates to drop the next card on the felt, revealing the last card, an 8 of hearts. The fate of the round is sealed in front of the whole crowd. The dealer's total goes over 21, meaning the house just took a massive L. The guy calls the house bust, sending the crowd into a total frenzy, whispering and suspecting she must be cheating after such an insane win streak. Standing right behind his boss in the shadows, Kay just smiles, completely satisfied that the plan is working perfectly. In reality, blackjack isn't just about luck. It's a math game where you can use card counting to track the exact odds. This classic method assigns positive, negative, or zero values to cards, just like that legendary college team did back in the day. The story of those genius kids who took Vegas for hundreds of thousands of dollars is famous in the betting world. But what Kay is pulling off right now is on a whole different level than those college kids. The guy has the crazy ability to perfectly memorize every single card as the dealer flips it. With every new card, he recalculates the exact odds in his head instantly, and uses the reflection from his fancy watch to pick the best move. He secretly flashes those exact plays to Akari in real time using tiny light signals that the security guys completely miss. For a guy used to the absolute chaos of a war zone, where he had to calculate escape routes, ammo counts, and wind speed, tracking 6 decks is basically child's play. That insane processing speed is a survival skill that only the legendary Nightshade, hardened by countless life-or-death fights, could pull off so flawlessly. While the crowd goes wild cheering, the dealer picks up the cards with shaking hands after another brutal loss. Akari gives the guy a side eye and calmly says she isn't done playing yet, telling him to deal the next hand. Hearing that, the guy's eyes bug out in absolute panic. His legs start shaking as he realizes that if he loses again, his bosses are definitely going to make him pay for it the hard way. Suddenly, a smug voice echoes through the room saying she should have at least called ahead if she wanted to come play. Akari turns around slowly and replies super coldly that it's been a long time. The newcomer walks up slowly, saying if he knew VIPs were coming, he would have rolled out the red carpet. It's the traitor Messiah Kuroki himself, flashing a fake smile with a squad of goons in suits and shades right behind him. Katagiri grinds his teeth and mutters at the villain to drop the cheap act. Ignoring his fake politeness, the heiress glares at the traitor while her massive chip stacks shine on the table. Kuroki starts slow clapping, praising her crazy lucky streak and promising to cash her out fully, as long as she calls it a night and leaves to sweeten the deal. The guy reaches into his jacket and pulls out a ridiculously fat envelope packed with cash. He hands the stack to the girl like he's doing her a favor, telling her to treat her friends to something nice. Akari looks at the money with pure disgust and roasts him, saying the rat that broke into her dad's castle seems to have gotten pretty chubby. She stares him down and asks if he really thinks he runs the city just because he's hiding behind his new florist buddies. Hearing that direct call out to the garden operatives, Kuroki's smug smile drops immediately. The rest of the gamblers start whispering, trying to figure out what florist means, and freak out when they realize the girl is the old boss's daughter, dropping his voice to a scary whisper. The traitor warns the girl to stop playing with fire for her own good. Keeping her totally boss posture, Akari agrees with him and starts getting out of her chair. She adds that she was getting pretty bored of simple card games anyway, making the dealer in the back sigh in relief. The girl locks eyes with the enemy and declares that if they are going to play for real, she wants to try the club's most famous and dangerous game. Kuroki goes dead silent at her nerve, while the crowd watches the tension spike. The traitor squints dangerously, realizing she's talking about the infamous Crimson Cage. The Crimson Cage is basically a brutal underground fight club right below the casino, where matches go down with pretty much zero rules. The heiress challenges him to put his best fighter in the ring against hers. Winner takes all. The villain laughs it off and says there are no fights scheduled tonight, but Akari cuts him off to drop her bet. Putting her hand on her chest looking like absolute royalty, she announces she's betting everything her dad left her, the family assets, the main house, and her own freedom. The girl points right at the traitor and demands he bet the entire casino in return. Kuroki breaks a cold sweat, completely stunned that this insane bet will literally decide who takes over the Shido clan. The crowd loses their minds, knowing they are about to watch a legendary underworld showdown. Kuroki grits his teeth, knowing that if he backs down in front of everyone, his street cred is totally ruined. Catching him hesitating, Akari flashes a cocky smile and asks if he's thinking about running away. That call-out hits his ego hard, making a vein pop on his forehead out of pure rage, giving her a dark, threatening look. Kuroki claims her crazy bet actually sounds like a good time. He steps up, gets right in her face, and officially accepts the brat's challenge. After the intense standoff, the two bosses step back while Kay watches the whole thing looking totally chill in his suit. The youth cracks a small, ironic smile, thinking things are finally about to get fun. The scene cuts back to the quiet, luxury VIP room sitting with her feet up on the control desk. Campanula is glued to the security monitors. The screens show the whole argument between Akari and Kuroki that just went down. The camera zooms in on the MC's serious mystery face. Campanula bursts out laughing when she spots Kay, feeling like she finally found something entertaining. The camera then moves to the main entrance of the underground fight club. Two massive bouncers in suits and shades are blocking the dark hallway. The creepy tunnel leads right into the blinding lights of the arena inside the underground pit. The crowd is going absolutely crazy, throwing their hands up and screaming for some violence. Huge spotlights hit the center of the ring where the brutal fights happen. The announcer jumps in the ring with a mic and hypes up all the crooks and degenerates in the Crimson Cage tonight. He excitedly admits there wasn't a fight on the books for tonight, but he hypes up that they managed to put together a super special main event, calling the crowd lucky to be there. The MC points to the red corner, introducing a bald guy covered in scars. It's the arena's undefeated monster, Takeshi Kinjo, known on the streets as the Smasher. Then, he dramatically points to the blue corner. The camera focuses on Kay's totally serious face as he tunes out the deafening crowd. The announcer introduces him as a total mystery with zero record, going only by the name K. Seeing the skinny guy in a suit, the crowd busts out laughing, betting he won't even last a minute. Katagiri steps up looking stressed and warns Kay that Takeshi is the king of the ring, using an insanely destructive full-contact karate style. The bodyguard nervously adds that all of this guy's past opponents ended up in the ICU, questioning if the kid actually stands a chance. He admits he knows the kid is crazy strong, but can't hide how panicked he is. Kay casually closes his eyes, sighs, and mysteriously says he isn't a normal fighter anyway. The announcer lays out the cage's rules, shouting that only weapons are banned, so anything else goes. The giant champ flashes a sick smile at the suited kid, who just stares back, totally unfazed. The MC throws his hand down and yells for the brutal match to kick off. Instantly, Takeshi charges in and throws a lightning-fast, heavy punch right at the kid's face. The giant unloads a crazy combo of heavy hits, looking totally sure he's going to get a fast knockout. The crowd loses it, screaming for the champ to totally wreck the kid. In the middle of the ring, the giant keeps swinging wildly while the fans cheer. Chilling in the VIP section next to Akari, Kuroki smokes his cigarette until his face suddenly drops. He squints, super confused that the mystery kid is actually dodging the giant's deadly punches like they are nothing. Moving flawlessly and barely breaking a sweat, Kay casually swats away the massive dude's heavy swings. The traitor is shocked to see the kid pulling off this perfect defense without even moving an inch from his spot. Trying to play it cool, the villain mocks the kid to the heiress, saying her guy is pretty good at cheap party tricks. Akari ignores him completely, while the guy keeps rambling that traditional martial arts are useless here. He argues that in a street fight, flashy moves don't win matches. While he talks, the giant keeps roaring and pushing himself to the absolute limit, just to try and tag the kid. Kuroki brags that the only thing that matters in the underworld is pure brute strength. Feeling the mobster's arm get too close, Akari aggressively swats his hand away with her glove. Kuroki gives a creepy laugh and warns that once the fight is over, he's gonna teach her some manners too. With a super weird and scary smile, the villain says every bad pet needs to be disciplined. He laughs again while the young heiress gives him an absolute look of disgust. Akari thinks to herself, it's hilarious this traitor thinks he can boss her around when he's just a lapdog for the garden. She is totally grossed out by his fake ego and refuses to stoop to his level. Kuroki puts out his cigarette looking cocky, fully convinced his champ will end this in a second. But the stall starts annoying him, so he stands up and yells for Takeshi to stop playing and finish it. The villain's words get stuck in his throat as his eyes bug out in pure shock. The massive Takeshi is completely gassed out, sweating buckets and panting hard, having no idea why he's so tired. Meanwhile, Kay looks completely fresh, without a single wrinkle on his suit, rocking a confident smile. Watching closely, Katagiri is mind-blown that the giant was the only one throwing punches, but is the only one totally exhausted. Mocking him, the MC asks if the champ is out of gas and can't even lift a finger anymore. Giving him zero time to breathe, Kay moves crazy fast and lands a brutal kick right to the tired giant's face. The devastating hit sends the big guy flying backward. Takeshi hits the mat completely out cold, turning the whole arena dead silent. The crowd is left with their jaws on the floor, unable to process what they just watched. While the ref starts counting 1, 2, 3, Katagiri runs up freaking out and asks what the kid just did. Kay casually fixes his suit and says the first rule of hunting a beast is breaking its fangs. As the count hits 7, 8, 9, Katagiri is super confused, but the kid just looks away chill. Suddenly, the ref himself starts foaming at the mouth and faceplants before finishing the count, leaving the guard speechless. Katagiri is totally spooked by the weird scene, while the kid keeps his usual poker face. In the crowd, a mystery person in a blue hoodie pops up next to a passed-out fan. Without anyone noticing, the figure starts walking through the crowd, dropping people one by one. Everyone starts panicking, wondering what the heck is going on. Guards in suits start dropping like flies as the hoodie figure moves through Campanula, lands a lightning-fast kick right to the face of a guard trying to step up. In seconds, the operative is standing in the middle of a pile of knocked-out dudes. The arena is total chaos with bodies everywhere, leaving only the main squad standing. Kay looks at the mess and jokes that the casino doesn't seem to like visitors. He looks right at the mystery person and asks what her deal is. Campanula pulls her hood back, smirking as she says she just put them to sleep, acting like she's closing the curtain on the show. She casually walks down to the ring. The girl adds they can't let random extras ruin the script. Kay is curious about her mentioning a script, smiling like a psycho. The girl explains that if they won, all the syndicate's hard work would be ruined. The vibe gets insanely heavy as they face off in the ring surrounded by bodies. Campanula says she has to step in to pretend this fight never happened, asking the mobster if he's cool with that karaoke, looking terrified from the VIP section, gulps and says he's totally fine leaving it to her. The operative gives a fake apology for the mess and gets ready to blitz the MC. In a flash, the kid reacts with crazy reflexes and blocks her lethal kick. Campanula notices his block and points out he just stopped a sickle kick aimed right at her neck. She smiles wider and asks what kind of salat he uses, since she recognized the move. Silat is a super dangerous traditional martial art from Southeast Asia. Because it's so broken in real fights, special forces everywhere use it, and there are tons of different styles. Some focus entirely on barehanded brawling using pure force. Others are all about knives and nasty joint locks. Kay's eyes glow red as he coldly downloads his new opponent's moves. The kid and the operative trade blows at insane speeds, looking like a blur in the ring. Mid-fight, Campanula slips past his guard and lands a crazy palm strike right on his chest. She backs off. Surrounded by the heavy pressure of her own attack, Kay gets blasted back by the hit and slides across the ring. The youth gets up slowly, wiping a little crimson from his mouth. Watching this, Katagiri is completely shook that the kid tanked the giant's iron fists but got tossed by one palm strike from this girl. While Kuroki's date looks worried, the trader looks super happy with how things are going. The MC's red eyes glow in the dark, showing off stats that completely break human limits. Kay wipes his mouth and asks straight up if she's one of the legendary funeral flowers. Campanula smirks, loving the clout, and proudly introduces herself as the Flower of Gratitude. She puts her hands together playfully and says, looking totally unhinged, she needs to thank him for spicing up a boring job. The guy stays crouched, catching his breath, while his ally stresses out and the enemy looks totally relaxed. Rocking a sarcastic smile with a bloody face, the kid says the pleasure is all his. Kay gives a scary look and says, since she's a funeral flower, he can crush her without holding back. The tension spikes as they gear up for round 2 of this deathmatch. Katagiri is sweating bullets outside the ring, knowing this fight is way out of his league. Akari watches super nervously. While the trader next to her looks super cocky, Kay gets ready to move, thinking to himself he definitely doesn't want to eat another palm strike. Campanula looks down at him, totally sure she's got this in the bag. The MC analyzes her up close, focusing on figuring out her exact fighting style. The hoodie girl taunts him, saying the room got way too quiet. She asks if he's out of tricks and warns that if he won't swing, she'll bring the fight to him in a blink. Campanula rushes him with absurd speed, leaving a blue blur behind. Kay is shocked by how fast she crossed the distance. The guard and operative throws a downward punch with an evil grin, showing off crazy reflexes. The MC barely dodges as her fist grazes past him. While dodging at high speed, Kay tries to download her attack pattern. The hoodie girl throws a wild punch, but the kid stays right in the pocket to keep his focus. He realizes that even though she's super fast, her swings are actually pretty predictable. The wind from her hits also gives away exactly where they are going. Kay compares her style to Lycoris's flawless technique. Realizing this girl is just pure speed and brute force with zero finesse, Campanula yells and goes for another right hook. Seeing an opening, the MC hits a pressure point on her arm flawlessly. The girl's eyes go wide as a massive shock totally paralyzes her arm. She jumps back to get some space, her right arm completely numb and useless. Katagiri cheers from the sidelines, hyped that the kid actually landed a solid counter. Campanula looks at her dead arm and immediately realizes he hit her radial nerve dead on. She smiles wickedly and notes that's exactly how he popped the giant's arm earlier, recognizing it as a silent move. But she notices instead of using his forearm, he used a specific wrist bone to focus all the damage on one spot. The girl smiles even bigger and asks if that sketchy move is the legendary method of death. Kay chuckles and asks if that move is trending on TikTok for her to know it so well. That technique is totally banned because it's meant purely for taking lives, supposedly dead and buried years ago in Indonesia. Campanula says it's definitely not mainstream, since she heard the last guy who used it died 11 years ago. Without missing a beat, she charges in and throws a massive high kick at his head. Even with one arm down, she keeps smiling confidently as the kick barely misses. Kay dodges and immediately counters by aiming for her planted leg. But the kid's eyes go wide when her vibe suddenly shifts into something totally bizarre. Campanula looks completely crazy and tells him he's fascinating, wanting to see what else he's got. The kid grits his teeth, super annoyed that he's gonna have to try way harder to put her down. He unloads a crazy fast combo of punches at the hoodie girl. Unbelievably, she easily dodges every single lightning-fast punch with smooth moves and a smile. Kay gets super frustrated, having no idea how she's dodging him so easily. Usually, fighters read the setup before a move, watching their opponent's center of gravity and eyes to predict the hit. That's how pros know what's coming before it even happens. Without doing that, it's literally impossible to dodge split-second attacks, but the kid realizes she isn't predicting anything. She's literally just dodging after seeing the punch. The MC is shook, realizing her reaction time completely breaks the laws of human limits, finding an opening. Campanula lands a massive hit that sends Kay flying upside down. The kid groans in pain, trying to recover mid-air. He crashes super hard into the arena floor, kicking up a huge dust cloud. Lying in the rubble, the MC struggles to push himself up. Katagiri screams the kid's name, freaking out about how bad he looks. Akari jumps up from her seat, totally horrified by the brutal hit, but Kuroki blocks her with his arm, looking completely unbothered. The hoodie operative claims this is real violence and the game is already over, but a voice asks what the difference is. The traitor gives a sick smile and says, walking away alive with the pot is the only rule in the underworld. Akari glares at him with pure hatred, calling him a coward for playing dirty. The heiress threatens him, saying when this is over, she'll make him pay way more than just money. She tells him to brace himself, while Kay steps up in the ring, showing he isn't done yet. The MC slowly gets up from the debris, getting everyone's attention. Casually fixing his red tie, the kid says he finally figured out her cheat code. With his face a bit scratched up, he drops the bomb that her secret is all in her nervous system. Campanula throws her hands up, cheering that he guessed it, happily admitting she's super special. The girl brags that her nervous system got totally artificially buffed using stem cells. She explains her axons are way thicker than normal, and she has a crazy amount of ion channels, making her basically immune to nerve strikes. Kay adds that her insane reaction speed comes from those mods, and she nods. She breaks it down. A normal pro takes about 0.2 seconds to react, but her ping is 0.002 seconds, giving her the reflexes of a literal cat. Because of that, the whole world looks like it's moving in slow motion or lagging. The kid concludes that her crazy palm strikes come from that same body control, which she calls proprioception. Katagiri and Akari listen to the science lesson sweating buckets, shocked that a mutant like that exists. Kuroki smiles, feeling like a winner, while the girl keeps flexing her powers. She says she can perfectly feel every muscle and power line in her body, letting her dump all her strength into one hit with zero waste. Campanula brags that the explosive power pros train for years to get is as easy as breathing for her. Kay dryly admits it's impressive, and she jokes she feels bad for Dahlia and Lycoris for trying so hard to stay human. She roasts the old garden operatives, saying their hard work was actually pretty pathetic. The kid smirks and agrees facts are facts, but casually asks if having super fast eyes doesn't make daily life super annoying. Campanula looks totally thrown off by the random question mid-fight. Kay asks how she even watches movies, since 24 frames a second must look like a laggy, unplayable mess. The girl gets a little annoyed and admits that part of her power actually really sucks. She quickly snaps out of it and says, if he's just stalling, it's time to wrap this up. The kid totally agrees and says he's gonna give her boring, laggy movie a solid ending. Suddenly, a blazing red aura erupts around Kay. Flashing an evil smile wrapped in her own purple aura, Campanula says she's going to enjoy the finale. In the VIP section, the tension peaks as the bosses watch them gear up for the final clash. The kid analyzes her, knowing her reflexes are completely broken. He knows any standard attack is just going to get blocked or dodged instantly. Her perfect dodges and afterimages prove fighting her normally is a waste of time. Knowing that, Kay realizes there's literally only one way to win. He figures his only shot is to land a perfect counter right when she attacks. But Campanula looks super smug under her hood. Thinking his plan is total garbage, she guesses the kid got a big head after landing that one lucky counter on her arm and thinks he can do it again. She laughs like a maniac and mentally reveals she actually let him hit her that one time on purpose. The operative brags she can cancel his counters as easily as she breathes. She starts her attack dropping super low and fast, ready to blitz him. Her fist flies in with insane power aimed right at his jaw. She arrogantly thinks any surprise move he tries has already been calculated in her perfect script. The operative loves watching targets cling to fake hope right before getting crushed. In a flash, she vanishes, leaving a dust trail from her crazy speed. The girl lunges at him, mentally ordering him to drop dead, but instead of blocking or getting ready to counter, Kay just stands there like a statue. Campanula mentally taunts him to try and counter her punch, claiming this is where he loses. The kid just stares at her looking totally bored, not moving a muscle. The operative notices he's doing absolutely nothing and gets confused, but she brushes it off knowing he doesn't have time to react anyway at this range. With her fist inches from his face, she decides it's completely over for him. At the very last millisecond, Kay casually tilts his head, letting the fatal punch graze right past him. Campanula is completely shook, realizing she missed a point-blank shot. What she didn't know was that his counter was already done, because her god-tier reflexes only work against stuff she can actually see. If his attack was too stealthy to spot but still hit a vital, she was done for. During that split-second distraction, the kid's trap was perfectly set. Kay's fingertips lightly and silently tapped the exact spot between her eyebrows. It was the legendary secret technique known as the poison needle, a fatal assassination move. The strike hits the facial trigeminal nerve directly, instantly cutting off the target's sensory inputs without causing immediate damage. But the second the target dials in their focus and hypes up their nerves, the technique acts like a bomb. The hit turns into a delayed action venom that completely nukes all their senses at once. With a dark look and his red eyes glowing, the kid sarcastically asks how she liked his script's grand finale. Kay plants his open hand firmly on her chest. Right as she tries to dump all her kinetic energy, Campanula's power gets completely canceled and bounced right back into her, sending her flying. The garden operative gets blasted backward, coughing up a ton of crimson. She screams in absolute agony, realizing her insides just got totally wrecked. The girl slams super hard into the ring wall, smashing it to pieces. The VIPs watch in total shock, jaws dropped. Unable to compute how the match flipped so fast, lying in the rubble, Campanula desperately asks what the heck he did to her. Kay looks at her totally chill and explains he literally just touched her, proving he wasn't capping. The kid didn't actually throw a punch. He just flexed his legs and dropped his hips to anchor himself. Then he aligned his spine perfectly and locked his upper body using his back and shoulder muscles. By sticking his arm out, the kid turned his entire body into a solid iron pole. It's the exact same logic as a powerlifter locking out a massive weight overhead. The athlete's body turns into a pillar that can handle hundreds of pounds, and Kay used that exact same trick. He turned himself into a spike rooted deep in the ground and just stood there. By doing that, he completely blocked all the force she tried to dump into him, using the tip of his human wall. Thanks to basic physics, her crazy kinetic energy bounced right back into her own body. Basically, it was like Campanula sprinting full speed into a sharp wooden spear stuck in the ground. That's a top-tier Chinese martial arts secret, borrowing the enemy's own power to wreck them. Standing tall and totally victorious, the MC looks down at his beaten opponent like an absolute boss. Totally wrecked on the floor, Campanula can't believe he actually used her own strength against her. Suddenly, she realizes that whole friendly chat they had about her nerves was actually a trap. Kay coldly confirms the talk was just a stalling tactic to let the delayed strike fully kick in. Even while coughing up crimson, the girl gives a weak laugh and admits his plan was genius. Just bummed her perfect script got ruined. The kid calmly says that people who kill for a living always catch up to their karma eventually. He looks at her fallen body and says it's finally time for her to pay the tab for her sins. Coughing up a ton of crimson from severe internal bleeding, the operative actually thanks him for the fight. She flashes one last crazy smile and admits that, thanks to him, her totally boring life finally got a little fun. In her last moments under the arena lights, the operative feels like her life was actually pretty interesting. The bright blue in her eyes slowly fades as she completely passes out in the ring. Looking at her fallen body, Kay mentally hopes she rests in peace, calling her a stubborn brat. But a panicked scream calling Kuroki's name echoes through the room, making the kid look up at the VIP box suspiciously. The tension spikes again in the underground club as something completely crazy goes down. Freaking out after seeing his best fighter get dropped, the traitor Kuraki grabs Akari by the neck and points a piece right at her head. Seeing the mobster pull such a cheap, coward move, Kei's face instantly twists into a look of pure hatred and killer fury.